Hello, welcome back. We're on chapter 3 of Freckle Juice. Where we stopped yesterday, Andrew had the recipe that he paid Sharon 50 cents for, and he could hardly wait for 3 o'clock to come home. So here we go. Andrew ran all the way home. Then he remembered he had to go to Mrs. Burrow's house to get the key. The secret recipe for freckle juice was folded carefully in the bottom of Andrew's shoe. He was going to put it inside his sock, but he was afraid if his foot got sweaty, the ink might blur and he wouldn't be able to read it. So inside his shoe was safe enough. Even though it was windy, nothing could happen to it there. He made up his mind not to read it until he got home. He didn't want to waste any time getting there, and he wasn't the world's fastest reader anyway, even though he'd gotten better since last fall. Since there might be some hard words that would take a while to figure out, Andrew pressed Mrs. Burrow's doorbell. "Hello, Andrew," she said, and she opened the door. "You're home from school early." "I ran all the way," Andrew panted. "How about some milk and cookies?" Mrs. Burrow asked. "No, thank you. I just want the key." "Well, come in, Andrew. Your mother's in the living room." Andrew followed Mrs. Burrows. His mother was dealing 4 piles of cards. "Hi, Mom. I came for the key." "Manners, Andrew, manners. Don't you say hello to all the ladies?" Mrs. Marcus asked. "Oh, hello," Andrew said. Mrs. Marcus reached for her purse. She opened it and gave Andrew the key. "Change your clothes and play outside. I'll be home by 4 o'clock." That only gave him 1 hour. How many minutes are in an hour, do you remember? He hoped the recipe didn't say to cook anything. He wasn't allowed to turn on the stove or the oven. Andrew dashed to his house, unlocked the front door, and took off his shoe as soon as he was inside. He pulled out the secret recipe and sat down on the floor and read it. It said, "Sharon's secret recipe for freckle juice. 1 glass makes an average amount of freckles. To get like Nikki Lane, drink 2 glasses. Mix up all these things together. Stir well and drink fast. Grape juice, vinegar, mustard, mayonnaise, juice from 1 lemon, pepper and salt, ketchup, olive oil, and a speck of onion. P.S. The faster you drink it, the faster you get freckles." How does that recipe sound to you guys? Sounds kind of gross to me. Andrew read the list twice. It didn't sound like much of a secret recipe. His mother used those things every day. Of course, she didn't use them all together. Maybe that was the secret part. Well, he'd paid 50 cents. He might as well find out. He climbed up on the kitchen counter so he could reach the cabinets. He found everything except the lemon. That was in the refrigerator, and the onion. Mrs. Marcus kept onions in the basement in a bin. Andrew ran downstairs and selected a small one, since the recipe only called for a speck. A speck is a little tiny piece of something. With or without the skin, Andrew wondered. He chose a big blue glass. He'd start with just 1 glassful and then drink another if he wanted more freckles. No point in overdoing it the first time. That's what his mother always says. Now, first the grape juice, Andrew thought. He filled the glass halfway and added an ice cube. All drinks tasted better cold, and he was sure this one would too. Then he added all the other ingredients one by one. His mom had 2 kinds of vinegars, wine vinegar and plain vinegar. Andrew picked the wine one. He put in some hot mustard, 1 spoonful of mayonnaise, and plenty of pepper and salt. Then some ketchup. That was hard to pour. But what about olive oil? His mother had vegetable oil, but no olive oil. Maybe the stuff that looked like water in the olive jar was what Sharon meant. He put a few spoonfuls of that in. Now for the lemon. Andrew cut in half and squeezed. Oh no, a seed dropped by mistake. He picked it out with a spoon. He hated pits in his juice. Now all he needed was that speck of onion, and he was all set. He stirred up the drink and smelled it. Oh, it smelled awful, just plain awful. He'd have to hold his nose while he drank it. He stuck his tongue into the glass to taste it. Ugh! Terrible! He didn't know how he would ever manage to get it down. And fast, too. It's said to drink it very fast. That old Sharon, she probably thought that he wouldn't be able to drink it. Well, he'd show her. He'd drink it all right. Andrew held his nose, tilted his head back, and gulped down Sharon's secret recipe for freckle juice. He felt like throwing up. It was that bad. But if he did, if it was that bad, but if he did, he'd get those freckles. No, he would be strong. Andrew crept into his mother's bedroom. He didn't feel well enough to walk. He sat on the floor in front of the full-length mirror. He waited for something to happen. He's waiting for the freckles to appear. Chapter 4, Pretty soon, something happened all right. Andrew turned greenish and felt very sick. His stomach hurt. At 4 o'clock, Mrs. Marcus came home. Yoo-hoo, Andrew, where are you? She called. Andrew heard her, but he couldn't answer. He was too weak. He made a small noise. Andrew Marcus, is that you? His mother stood in the doorway of her bedroom. What are you doing in here? I told you to play outside. And why didn't you change your clothes? Didn't I say to change your clothes? Andrew made another noise. Mrs. Marcus looked at his face. Andrew, you're green. Absolutely green. Are you sick? Andrew nodded. He was afraid if he opened his mouth, he'd lose the freckle juice. What hurts? Mrs. Marcus asked, feeling his forehead. Andrew moaned and held his stomach. Oh my, appendicitis. You must have appendicitis. I'm going to call the doctor. No, I better just drive you straight to the hospital. No, I'll call the ambulance. Andrew shook his head, but his mother didn't notice. She said, Don't move. I'm going into the kitchen to get the phone. I'll be right back. Andrew rolled around moaning. Mrs. Marcus came back to her bedroom in a hurry. Andrew Marcus, I've just seen that mess in the kitchen. Did or did you not make something and eat it? Oh, he forgot to clean up. Now she knew. Well, he didn't care. His stomach was killing him. Well, young man, I'm surprised at you. Surprised. Mrs. Burrows offered you milk and cookies, and you refused. Then you came home and made yourself and I don't know what, and scared me half to death thinking you had appendicitis. I've always thought you were more sensible, Andrew. I just can't believe it. Andrew closed his eyes. Now, young man, you're going to bed. Andrew thought that was the best idea he'd heard in a long time. Mrs. Marcus gave him 2 spoonfuls of pink stuff that tasted like peppermint. Then she tucked him into bed. Maybe the freckles would come out while he was sleeping. Right now, he didn't care much if they ever came out. He hated Sharon. She'd done it on purpose, just to get his 50 cents. He'd show her. She'd be sorry someday. He drifted off to sleep. He had terrible dreams. A big green monster made him drink 2 quarts of freckle juice 3 times a day. Every time he drank it, the monster got freckles, but Andrew didn't. Andrew woke up sweaty. His stomach still felt funny. His mother gave him 2 more spoonfuls of the pink stuff, and he fell asleep again. The next day, Andrew stayed home from school. He only looked in the mirror once. No freckles. He wasn't surprised. At noon, he drank some hot tea. He wasn't ever going back to school. Sharon wasn't going to see him without freckles. She thought she was so great. Well, she wasn't going to get the chance to laugh at him. No, sir. But the following day, his mother woke him up and sang, Time for school, rise and shine. Don't forget to wash your neck and behind your ears. She pulled the covers off him. I'm not going to school today, Andrew said. I'm never going to school again. He hid his head under the pillow. So, I've got a school dropout in 2nd grade. We'll have to do something about that. Here's your clothes. I want to see you up and dressed before I count to 15, or you're going to take 3 baths a day, every day, for the next 10 years. Andrew got dressed. He ate a breakfast bun and drank some milk, but he couldn't let Sharon get away with it. He had to do something. That's the end of chapter 4. We're going to stop there today. What do you think Andrew's going to do? What do you think his plan is going to be? The freckle juice didn't work, and Sharon probably knew that. And Andrew probably should have figured it out, but he really wanted those freckles, so he wanted it to work. So think about what you think his plan is for Sharon. Tomorrow, we'll read on.